story from California. My husband told everyone I was crazy to hide what he did to me at night. The house looked perfect from the outside. Freshly painted walls, manicured lawn, and bright porch lights that glowed warmly every evening. From the neighborhood, it seemed like the picture of happiness, the kind of home where love thrived. But behind closed doors, my world was anything but that. My husband, Mark, was charming to everyone who met him. To the outside world, he was the perfect husband, attentive, successful, and polite. No one could imagine the dark side of the man I lived with every night. He told everyone I was crazy, painting me as unstable and paranoid, a woman losing her mind. That was his shield, the story he spun to hide the truth of what he did to me. At night, behind the facade of a quiet household, I lived in fear. The man who once promised me forever transformed into a stranger who controlled every breath I took. His anger wasn't loud. It was a slow, terrifying burn that left invisible scars. He kept me isolated, whispering lies about how no one would believe me. "You're just hysterical," he'd say, twisting my reality until I doubted myself. I learned to hide the bruises beneath layers of clothing and makeup. I mastered the art of smiling during the day, pretending everything was fine while my heart shattered in silence. The nights were the hardest, the silence deafening, except for the echoes of his threats and the weight of his hands. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, but who would listen? Who would believe the crazy woman behind the perfect house? Each time I tried, Mark was there, weaving his web of deception faster than I could speak. One day, something inside me broke free. The fear began to falter, replaced by a flicker of courage. I realized that his story was just that, a story, and it was time for me to write my own truth, a truth no one could deny. The morning light felt heavier than usual, filtering through the curtains like a spotlight on my brokenness. I sat at the kitchen table, clutching a cup of coffee I barely tasted, trying to piece together the courage I needed. Mark was already gone, off to work like nothing was wrong. The man the world adored, the man who hid behind lies, was nowhere in sight. I stared at my phone, the screen locked tight with unanswered calls and unread messages, each one a potential lifeline, but I was frozen. Fear was still a shadow that clung to my thoughts, whispering that any step forward could shatter what little safety I had left. But deep inside, the flicker of hope burned brighter. I thought about my daughter, Lily. She was 6, innocent, and full of light, the one person who deserved a mother who was whole, not broken by silence and pain. I had to find a way out, not just for me but for her. That afternoon, while Mark was at work, I called the local shelter. My hands trembled as I spoke to the kind voice on the other end, explaining bits and pieces of my situation without breaking down. They told me about resources, safe places, and women who had survived far worse. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe there was a way out. As days passed, I started documenting everything. Bruises, threats, broken promises. Each photo was a small rebellion, proof against his lies. I hid these in a secret folder on my phone, away from his watchful eyes. I knew this was dangerous, but it was necessary. Mark noticed the shift, the quiet strength growing inside me. His smile was colder, his patience thinner. One night, he cornered me in the living room, voice low but menacing. "You think you can just walk away?" But I stood taller, looked him in the eye and said, "I'm not who you think I am anymore." That night, as I lay awake, fear still pressing down, I made a promise to myself. No matter what came next, I would protect Lily, and I would fight for the truth to be heard, even if the world called me crazy. The weeks that followed were a blur of whispered plans and stolen moments. I met with counselors at the shelter who helped me draw a safety map, places I could go if Mark's anger turned violent again. Every step forward felt like walking on a razor's edge, but I knew I couldn't stay trapped any longer. Lily didn't understand why Mommy was suddenly quieter, why I sometimes cried when I thought she was asleep. I held her close, whispering stories of brave women and secret strength. I promised her a life filled with sunshine, laughter, and freedom, promises I had almost forgotten how to make. One evening, Mark came home early. His eyes, dark and stormy, scanned the house like a predator searching for a weakness. I felt my heart seize, but instead of hiding, I stood my ground, keeping Lily safely in my arms. "You're planning something," he accused, voice low and dangerous. "No," I whispered, voice steady. "I'm planning to live." He laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the walls. "You're crazy if you think you can leave me." That night I called the police after he stormed out, threatening words trailing behind him like poison. The officers who arrived were kind but cautious. They told me how common this was, how many women suffered in silence. I realized then that I wasn't alone, even if it had felt that way. The court date for my restraining order was set, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. The courtroom was cold and impersonal, but as I spoke my truth, the weight that had crushed me for years started to lift. The judge believed me. The system for once was on my side. Mark's reaction was fury wrapped in denial. "She's lying," he spat. "She wants to ruin me." But no one was listening anymore. My voice was louder, stronger. The whispers that once called me crazy were drowned out by the courage I found inside myself. Lily held my hand tightly as we walked out of the courthouse. Together we were stepping into a new chapter, one where the past no longer defined us, and where healing, though slow, was finally possible. The days after the court hearing were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. Mark was gone, but his presence lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. The house felt too big, too silent. Every creak in the floor sounded like a warning, yet despite the fear, a fragile thread of hope was weaving itself through the cracks of my broken heart. I moved into a small apartment near Lily's school, a place where no one knew our story. It was modest, with peeling paint and a squeaky front door, but it was ours. A fresh start. I decorated her room with bright colors, filling it with books and toys, things that promised a childhood far from the darkness we'd escaped. Therapy sessions became a lifeline, talking about the nights I'd hidden bruises, the times I stayed silent to protect Lily, was painful. But each word spoken was a brick laid in the foundation of my healing. I learned that the blame was not mine, that survival was not weakness. Lily blossomed in ways I hadn't dared hope for. Her laughter returned, soft and unguarded. She started drawing pictures of sunshine and flowers, often slipping me a shy smile that said, "We're okay now." Those moments reminded me why I'd fought so hard to break free. One afternoon, as we walked home from school, a woman stopped me. She introduced herself as Carla, a survivor who had been through something similar. Her story was different, but the pain was the same. She handed me a flyer for a support group, a circle of women bound by strength and shared scars. I hesitated. The idea of opening up terrified me, but I knew isolation was a prison. At the first meeting, surrounded by faces marked by struggle and resilience, I felt a quiet acceptance. Stories poured out of fear, hope, and the will to reclaim life. For the first time, I realized that healing was a journey, not a destination. Mark's attempts to reach me were futile. His words, once filled with threats, now fell on deaf ears. I had found my voice, firm and unwavering. Legal battles loomed ahead, custody hearings, restraining orders. But with each challenge, my resolve strengthened. Nightmares haunted my sleep, but I held on to the vision of a peaceful future. Every morning, Lily and I greeted the day with a determination that no darkness could extinguish. Though the scars remained, they no longer defined us. Together we were rewriting our story, one of survival, courage, and unbreakable love. As weeks turned into months, the rhythm of our new life settled into something steady, if still fragile. The walls of our small apartment began to feel like a sanctuary, rather than a cage. I found work at a local bookstore, the quiet among the shelves offering a balm to my restless mind. Each day I watched Lily grow more confident, her eyes bright with curiosity and trust, a stark contrast to the fearful child I once tried to shield. Court dates still loomed on the horizon. Mark fought bitterly for custody, wielding lies like weapons, trying to convince the judge I was unstable. But I prepared meticulously, gathering evidence and testimony from therapists, neighbors, and friends who had witnessed his temper. Every file, every statement was a shield for Lily and me, a promise that we wouldn't be silenced again. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling hearing, Lily and I sat on a bench outside the courthouse, her small hand wrapped tightly around mine, grounding me. She looked up with those honest eyes and said, "Mom, are we safe now?" The question struck me deeply. I didn't have a perfect answer, but I squeezed her hand and whispered, "We're getting there, baby. We're getting there." Slowly, I began to rebuild not only our lives but my sense of self. I reconnected with old friends I had pushed away, tentatively stepping back into the world I'd abandoned. I joined the support group regularly, finding strength in the shared stories and encouragement. Those women became my tribe, a living reminder that I was not alone. Yet, healing wasn't linear. There were nights when the past clawed its way back, memories flooding like a tide threatening to overwhelm me. During those times, I held Lily close, whispering promises of safety and love. I reminded myself that pain was part of the process, but not the whole story. The final custody hearing approached, a moment that would decide not just legal rights but the future we dreamed of. When the judge ruled in our favor, a wave of relief and victory crashed over me. Tears streamed down my face as I hugged Lily, feeling the weight of years lift from our shoulders. That night, as we lay side by side, I whispered a vow to my daughter. No matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our past may have been broken, but our future was ours to shape, and in that moment, surrounded by the quiet peace of a new beginning, I finally believed in the power of hope. The victory in court was a turning point, but it was far from the end of our journey. With legal custody secured, I knew the real work of healing and rebuilding had only just begun. Mark's presence didn't simply vanish. His shadow lingered, sometimes in unexpected ways. I had to prepare Lily and myself for the subtle, persistent echoes of the past. We started attending therapy together. Lily's counselor helped her find words for the fears and confusion she'd carried for so long. Through art and stories, she began to piece together her experience, slowly transforming pain into understanding. Watching her express herself was both heartbreaking and healing. Every step forward was a testament to her strength. Meanwhile, I focused on reclaiming my independence. I enrolled in evening classes, determined to finish my degree and secure a better future for us. The nights were long and tiring, balancing work, school, and motherhood, but each challenge was a brick laid in the foundation of a new life. I refused to let Mark's cruelty define our story. Support from friends grew steadily. Neighbors who once only nodded in passing became allies, offering help, encouragement, and sometimes just a listening ear. The local community center became a hub for us, a place where Lily could play without fear and where I found moments of respite. It was humbling to realize how much healing comes from connection. Occasionally, I would catch myself watching Lily as she laughed with new friends, her face alight with joy I hadn't seen in years. Those moments anchored me, reminding me why I fought so hard. The trauma of the past was real, but it didn't have to dictate our future. Every day was a choice to move forward. But progress wasn't without setbacks. Some days nightmares stirred in both of us, memories invading the quiet. On those nights I held her tightly, whispering assurances we would overcome together. I learned to be patient with the slow rhythm of recovery, understanding that healing is a winding path, not a straight line. Looking ahead, I felt cautious optimism. The scars remained, but they were no longer wounds that bled unseen. They were marks of survival, resilience, and an unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. Our past was painful, but our future was filled with promise, shaped by love and the courage to keep fighting. As time passed, the small victories began to build into something more profound. Lily's laughter grew more frequent, her steps lighter, and her dreams bigger. School became a place of hope, rather than fear, and her teachers noted the change, praising her resilience. Watching her blossom was the greatest reward and the strongest reminder of why I had endured so much. I found strength in new routines, morning walks before the world stirred, quiet evenings spent reading or studying, and weekends filled with parks and laughter. These ordinary moments became sacred, anchors in a life once rocked by chaos. Every shared smile, every peaceful night was a stitch repairing the fabric of our lives. Our relationship deepened in ways I hadn't expected. Lily began sharing her thoughts and fears openly, trusting me with the pieces of her heart she had long guarded. We learned to communicate with patience and honesty, breaking down walls built by years of pain. Her courage inspired me daily, fueling my determination to be the mother she deserved. Though the scars from the past remained, their power lessened. Therapy continued to guide us through the shadows, teaching tools for coping and self-love. I confronted my own trauma, finding a voice that had been silenced for years. Healing was no longer a distant hope, but a tangible journey we walked together, step by step. But life was not without challenges. Financial struggles tested my resolve, and loneliness sometimes crept in during the quietest hours. Old fears whispered doubts, and the weight of responsibility sometimes felt overwhelming. Yet, each obstacle was met with renewed grit, because giving up was never an option. Friends and community became our fortress. The kindness of strangers, the warmth of neighbors, and the support of those who had faced similar battles reminded us that we were not alone. Together we wove a network of hope that lifted us higher than we ever imagined. One afternoon, as Lily ran ahead in the park, her laughter echoing against the blue sky, I realized we had come so far. From the darkness of those early days to the light we now embraced, our story was one of survival, strength, and love's unyielding power. Whatever lay ahead, I knew we would face it together, unbreakable. The seasons changed, and with them came new opportunities. I found a job at a local community center, teaching art to children. It wasn't just a paycheck, it was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild my identity beyond the shadow of abuse. Each brushstroke, each splash of color, became a symbol of freedom and expression for both me and my students. Lily thrived in school, her confidence blossoming like spring flowers. She joined the drama club, a world where she could be anyone but herself, or maybe finally, be exactly who she was meant to be. Watching her perform, hearing her laugh, I felt an overwhelming pride and a fierce determination to protect that joy. Our little apartment transformed from a place of refuge into a home filled with warmth and possibility. We painted the walls bright colors, hung her artwork in every corner, and filled the shelves with books that carried us to faraway places. Each small change was a victory, a statement that we belonged to no one but ourselves. Still, the past lingered like a shadow at the edges of our lives. Nightmares visited more frequently during stressful times, and sometimes the weight of anxiety pressed too hard. But I learned to recognize the signs, to breathe through the fear, and to reach out when the darkness threatened to consume me. Therapy sessions remained a vital anchor, a place where I could unravel and then rebuild. Trusting others was harder. I was guarded, wary of those who offered help, afraid that kindness masked hidden motives. But slowly, friendships formed, people who saw me not as a victim, but as a survivor. Their support was a balm, reminding me that healing wasn't a solitary journey. One afternoon, as Lily and I sat in the park sharing ice cream, a woman approached us. She was soft-spoken and kind-eyed, a volunteer from a local shelter who offered resources and a listening ear. That conversation opened a door to community programs that provided financial aid and counseling. The weight of worry lightened just a bit. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I held Lily's hand tightly. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hope, not the fragile kind, but the steady flame that burns through the darkest nights. Together, we were building a future defined not by pain, but by resilience, love, and unshakable strength. The mornings grew brighter as I settled into a routine that felt like reclaiming my life. Lily and I woke early, sharing quiet moments over breakfast before the bustle of the day began. I noticed the small victories, the way she smiled without hesitation, how her footsteps sounded lighter, how our conversations flowed more freely. These were the signs that healing was real, even if the scars beneath remained hidden. Work at the community center deepened my sense of purpose. Teaching art wasn't just about colors and shapes, it was about giving children a voice when words failed them. Each class brought new stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. I found strength in their resilience, a reminder that pain could be transformed into beauty. Outside of work, I continued to build a support network. The women's group met weekly, a circle of warriors, sharing truths and fears without judgment. Their stories echoed my own, yet their hope was infectious. We celebrated progress and offered shoulders to lean on during setbacks. I learned that healing was neither linear nor solitary. It was collective and continuous. One evening, I received a call from my lawyer. There was news about the divorce proceedings. Finalization was near. Relief washed over me, mingled with anxiety about what lay ahead. Ending that chapter legally felt like closing a door, but also opening a window to freedom. I realized that the battle wasn't just against my husband, but also against the fear and silence that had held me captive. Lily sensed the shift too. She asked questions about the future, where we would live, what our life would look like. I answered with honesty, promising stability and love. We dreamed together of new adventures, weekend trips, art classes, and days spent exploring the world beyond our apartment walls. At night, when the world was quiet and shadows lengthened, I sometimes felt vulnerable. Memories whispered, doubts crept in, but I faced those moments with the tools I had gathered: therapy, community, self-compassion. I learned to speak kindly to myself, to celebrate each step forward, no matter how small. One afternoon, as I watched Lily play with new friends in the park, a sense of peace settled over me. The laughter around her was a balm to my soul. I understood then that while the past shaped us, it did not define us. We were authors of our own story now, writing pages filled with courage, hope, and endless possibilities. The days turned into weeks, each one carrying me further from the shadows of my past and closer to a future I dared to imagine. I found strength, not just in myself but in the people who surrounded me. Friends, counselors, even strangers who had become allies. Their support was a lifeline, a reminder that I was not alone. Lily thrived in her new school, her teachers noticing a newfound confidence that warmed my heart. She joined the art club, sharing her drawings with pride. Watching her reclaim her joy was the greatest gift I could receive. Her resilience was a beacon, lighting the way through my own struggles. Financial independence came slowly but surely. I took on extra hours at the community center and began selling some of my artwork online. The small income gave me a sense of control and hope. It was a reminder that I could build something from the fragments, a life stitched together with my own hands. One day I received an invitation to speak at a local event about domestic abuse awareness. The thought terrified me, but I knew it was important. Sharing my story could help others find their voice, just as I had found mine. Preparation was painstaking, reliving pain, confronting fears, but the purpose gave me courage. The event day arrived, and as I stepped onto the stage, the room hushed. Faces of strangers, some familiar, turned toward me with expectation. I spoke honestly, vulnerably, about fear, silence, and the journey to freedom. Tears welled up, not just mine, but those of others in the audience. In that moment, we were connected by shared pain and collective hope. Afterward, a woman approached me, her voice trembling as she thanked me for speaking out. She shared her own story, one of years spent in darkness. We embraced, two survivors acknowledging each other's strength. It was a reminder that healing rippled outward, touching lives in ways I could never predict. Meanwhile, the legal process moved forward. My husband contested custody, attempting to wield the past against me. The battles were exhausting, but I was prepared. With the support of my lawyer and evidence of my growth and stability, I stood firm. Each hearing reinforced my resolve to protect Lily and reclaim our lives. At home, our sanctuary grew. I painted the walls bright colors, filling the rooms with warmth and laughter. Lily's art adorned the fridge, each piece a testament to our resilience. Our nights were peaceful, the echoes of the past fading into quiet strength. Looking back, the road was harrowing, but every step brought me closer to freedom. I had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. And as Lily and I looked toward the horizon, hope was no longer just a word, it was our future. The courtroom became the battleground where my past and future collided. Facing him again, my husband was a test of every ounce of strength I had mustered. He sat there, eyes cold, trying to dismantle my truth with lies and manipulation. But this time, I was ready. My lawyer presented evidence, texts, photos, witness statements that painted the real picture of our life behind closed doors. Each piece chipped away at his false narrative. I felt a quiet power rising inside me, fueled by years of silence finally breaking free. Lily sat beside me, clutching my hand. Her presence grounded me. I whispered encouragement, promising her that we would be safe, that she would never have to live in fear again. Her eyes reflected trust and hope, a reminder of what I was fighting for. The judge listened intently as I recounted the nights of pain and isolation. The words were hard to say aloud, but necessary. Every detail exposed the mask he wore for the world, a loving husband hiding a tormentor. The courtroom held its breath. Cross-examination was brutal. He tried to twist my words, cast doubt on my character, but I stood firm, unwavering. The truth was my shield. And with each question, his facade cracked further. Outside the courtroom, I found solace in support groups, where others shared stories like mine. We were warriors, survivors, bound by pain and resilience. Together we reclaimed our voices. Months passed. The court ruled in our favor. Custody was granted to me, visitation supervised, and restraining orders put in place. Freedom tasted bittersweet but real. Lily and I began rebuilding. Not just a home, but trust and joy. Therapy helped us heal, teaching us to face fears and embrace hope. I found a job that valued me, and slowly peace settled into our lives. Looking back, I realized that telling my story was the first step toward reclaiming it. Each day forward was a victory, a promise to Lily and myself that darkness would never define us again. Life after the trial was a mixture of relief and challenge. The courtroom victory felt like a door opened, but the path beyond it was still filled with uncertainty. Every day I wrestled with memories that clung to me like shadows, threatening to pull me back into darkness. Lily needed me more than ever. Her smiles were fragile at first, but they grew stronger. I watched her relearn what safety felt like. No sudden noises, no fearful glances, just laughter and light. Those moments gave me strength, but also reminded me of the scars that would take time to fade. Friends and family stepped closer, their support a balm to wounds I hadn't fully acknowledged. Some apologized for not seeing the signs sooner. Others simply held space for my pain. I learned that healing wasn't linear, and that asking for help was not weakness but courage. Therapy sessions became our sanctuary. For Lily, a place to speak without fear. For me, a chance to untangle the complex emotions, guilt, anger, hope, that swirled within. Slowly, the tight grip of fear loosened, replaced by determination. Work gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I found a role where my voice mattered, where my experience shaped better policies for others in similar situations. It was a way to turn pain into progress, darkness into light. Sometimes the past whispered back, a nightmare, a trigger, a doubt, but I met it head on. I surrounded myself with people who reminded me of my worth. I told myself every day, I am more than what happened to me. I am a survivor, a mother, a fighter. Lily's laughter filled our home once more, pure and unburdened. And in those moments I knew the future was ours to write, a story of resilience, love and hope. The years that followed were filled with quiet victories and small celebrations. Lily's progress was a beacon that guided me through the darkest nights. Each new word she spoke clearly, each night she slept soundly, was a triumph that erased some of the fear that had once consumed us. We built routines that brought stability, morning walks in the park, bedtime stories read with gentle voices, meals shared at the table, all became anchors in our healing journey. It wasn't always easy. Some days were clouded with doubt and exhaustion, but together we found strength. I reconnected with my own dreams, long buried under layers of survival. Education, career growth, and community involvement slowly re-entered my life. I became an advocate, speaking out for those silenced by abuse. Sharing my story wasn't just for me, it was a lifeline for others. The scars of betrayal and pain remained, but they no longer defined me. I learned to set boundaries, to trust cautiously, and to value my own worth beyond the lies I had been told. Healing wasn't a destination but a continuous journey, sometimes slow, sometimes painful, but always forward. Lily blossomed, her laughter now unshadowed by fear. Watching her play with other children, confident and joyful, filled my heart with a quiet pride. The nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of hope and possibility. Our bond grew stronger every day, forged in the fires of hardship and love. I promised myself that no darkness would ever steal her light again. Together we were reclaiming our lives, one moment at a time. One afternoon as Lily played in the backyard, I sat on the porch reflecting on how far we'd come. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled light over her smiling face. For a moment I allowed myself to believe in a future free from fear and silence. But healing, I knew, was never linear. Shadows of the past occasionally whispered in the quiet corners of my mind, memories of the nights I spent hiding, the endless lies I told to protect myself and my daughter. They lingered like ghosts. Some days the weight felt unbearable, and the urge to retreat was strong. Therapy had become a lifeline, helping me untangle the complex emotions that abuse leaves behind. With every session I reclaimed pieces of myself, rebuilding a foundation on honesty and self-compassion. Slowly I began to forgive, not to excuse what happened, but to free myself from its grip. Community support was another pillar of strength. Friends who stood by me, listening without judgment, offering help when I felt weakest. I joined a local support group, where stories like mine were met with understanding and solidarity. Sharing pain created connection, and connection fostered healing. Still, there were challenges. Fear of judgment, the lingering mistrust of others, and the struggle to balance protecting Lily with encouraging her independence. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself why I fought so fiercely, to give her a life full of love and safety. Our journey was ongoing, a testament to resilience, and as I watched Lily chase butterflies in the garden, I felt hope bloom inside me. We had survived, and we would continue to thrive. Months passed, and the rhythm of our new life began to settle. The mornings held a quiet peace, with Lily's laughter filling the rooms as she prepared for school, and my heart swelled with pride watching her grow. Though scars remained, both visible and hidden. They no longer defined us. I had found a steady job at a community center, helping others who faced struggles similar to mine. Each story I heard strengthened my resolve. Sharing my experience had transformed from a source of shame into a beacon of hope. I was no longer just a survivor, I was an advocate, a voice for those silenced by fear. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up with those wide, trusting eyes and whispered, "Mom, will we always be safe now?" I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We're safe because we have each other, and I will always protect you." The promise echoed within me. Every day was a commitment to keep that promise, to build a future where fear had no home. I enrolled in classes to finish my education, determined to open doors that abuse had tried to close. Each assignment completed was a victory, each step forward a reclaiming of my life. Legal battles still lingered, restraining orders, court dates, but the weight felt lighter with the support of a fierce attorney and community advocates. Every victory, no matter how small, chipped away at the past's hold. Though the journey was far from over, the darkness no longer consumed me. Instead, it fueled a fire, a relentless drive to create a life defined by courage, love, and hope. For Lily, for myself, and for all the women whose stories were yet to be told.